Plot: A Patch of Blue, 1965. Written by Shannon Patrick Sullivan. A blind, uneducated white girl is befriended by a black man, who becomes determined to help her escape her impoverished and abusive home life by introducing her to the outside world. Voiceover off.
When you're blind and watching movies, what will you find? A blind superhero whose superpowers are acting like he's not blind. A sighted actor over dramatically touching people's faces. Or maybe the whole joke is that they're bumping into different places. A spectacular, macular generation. Tunnel vision to your television and dilly off this movie with audio descriptions. They're movie buffs who know their stuff. You'll be thoroughly entertained. Join Sky and Melissa throughout film history and Citizen White Cane.
Hello.
Hi.
And welcome to Citizen White Cane, the podcast that's blinded by light boxes and startles at loud boom mics. My name is Sky McLeod.
I'm Melissa Bukta.
And we are talking about Patch of Blue.
Yes, this, speaking of being startled by mic sounds, it was my week to pick, and so I picked, A Patch of Blue from 1965,
Yes.
Academy Award nominated for acting performances. The film did garner Shirley Winters a Best Supporting Actor Oscar.
Right. And also our blind character played by Elizabeth Hartman.
Yes.
Was also nominated. Elizabeth Hartman was nominated for an award, but did not win. And at the time, was the youngest person ever nominated for a lead actress.
Wow.
I think
this must have been before Tatum O'Neal then, because
I think
technically she was nominated at 8, I believe.
yes, this was a record held for 10 years.
Okay, gotcha.
And I think someone 20 years old and 75 overtook. It's just such a weird.
Yeah, and also garnered a Best Actor nomination for Sidney Poitier.
Yes,
For his performance in this film
Yep.
as well.
So it was very Academy Awarded, which is or nominated really, but that is. I feel like you have a blind, sighted actress playing a blind character.
I know
You got like a little bit of a magical Negro. I mean, it is a lot of that kind of trope.
Yeah. Okay. I would. Yes, his character does fill that role, like what the actual definition of the trope is. I feel like I don't want to necessarily call him that, because he just feels real, I guess. But it's hard. And no, I get it, because like I understand the concept of the trope, and I'm trying real hard to like fish for some evidence that disputes that claim, and I can't really do it. But I don't know, his character just doesn't feel pandering, I guess,
It's
to the audience. He felt like
doesn't feel pandering.
No, he felt like a real genuine person.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of risking a lot of his personal safety in this movie for no apparent reason.
That's true. No, that's
not that like
true.
It's not cool to help someone out who's struggling, but like it also just we don't really get to his motive for it is never really explained, and he does seem to kind of exist entirely to like have the main white character's life turned around.
True.
So
true. Like I said, I can't dispute it. I can't come up with a good enough explanation to dispute the trope.
But yeah, I mean, we can, and we'll, I'm sure, talk more about the specifics as well. But we do have I guess, they're kind of co-leads, but in a lot of ways, we really are more following
Selina is her
yes.
character's name.
Yes,
right,
exactly.
Elizabeth's story, Selina's story.
So she is like a 18-year-old, I think, is how old she's supposed to be.
Yes, because she says so in the movie.
Yeah, she does
says
at
she's
the end.
18. Yeah.
Though I guess she could always be lying, but
Yeah, I don't necessarily think she was lying, but yeah,
yeah,
that's
so
true.
she's 18. She's being raised by her mother and grandfather.
Yes.
Her grandfather is drunk and like basically is always is just always drunk every time we see him. He is very unreliable, and then her mom, I guess, is a sex worker from the beginning.
It feels like she does a lot of jobs, and some of them involve sex work, being a
Right.
sex worker, and she's going to, there's a whole plot point, she's going to start a brothel, basically, with her best friend.
Right.
Essentially.
Which is like, enterprising young women.
Right.
They're not that young.
No, no, they're not. But old Pa is the grandfather character. He's played by Wallace Ford, and Shelley Winters plays her mother.
Right. And as the one who actually got an Academy Award.
Yeah. I'm not saying she doesn't. I'm never gonna try and take an Oscar away from somebody. I don't.
You're gonna come to their house.
Yeah, and didn't steal it. I don't think her performance was bad. You know, I completely bought her as this horrible, awful, gross character.
It's over the top.
But it's very over the top. But
The character is very over the top too.
Yes.
It's like you can't. I think there's definitely like we could be more subtle, but a lot of that's in the writing as well. Like
right.
yeah.
No, this movie is not.
No.
But if anybody should have won an Oscar, I think it should have been Sidney Poitier or yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, it's so this movie. I mean, you were saying before we were recording that you were expecting to like it, or like that you enjoyed it more than you were expecting.
yeah, I kind of sort of picked this one, for pardon the pun, out of the blue. But it had always been one that's been on our back burner that we just kept passing over and haven't really ever done. And you know, and
'Cause the Oscar nominated ones are always like a slog a little bit.
Right. And I'm just not a huge romance person. And that's how they do it's a romantic drama. And I'm like, oh no. If you really don't want me to watch your movie, call it a romantic drama. I'm out. No thanks. But what I really liked about it is how much their relationship, especially, just makes you think. It's something that could have been a really skeevy, gross relationship, but it's very complex, and I think that's the only bit of like nuance or complexity in the movie, and because I kept guessing how it was going to end, and I kept thinking, oh, it's probably gonna, this is an American movie, it's probably gonna end, you know, this sort of way, and they're gonna be together in the end, and everything's gonna be tied up with a bow, and it wasn't that.
Was it though?
Kind of. I mean, yeah, okay.
I mean, I felt like it was as Hollywood ending as you could be, basically. Because it didn't make any sense for them to be together. Because he was like a surrogate father figure. Like, he was not a surrogate, or I guess you don't have a surrogate romantic, but he was not a love interest. He felt much more like a surrogate father to her.
Yes.
And it was like the weirdness of like the, you know, kind of like how the movie was like sort of dealing with sex. It was just kind of like, I don't know, it felt weird and dated in a way, but like also like it wasn't committing to saying anything at all.
Right. But it also made sense for Selina's character. I mean, we have that bit in the kitchen. We find out Selina was assaulted by one of her mother's Johns, and Gordon is the only person that has cared about her at all, or that has cared enough to show her the world, essentially. So in my head, it kind of makes sense that, and she's 18. We find out that she's 18. So in my head, it kind of sort of makes sense that she would glom onto and attach herself to this person that is actually showing her kindness and is treating her like a human being and the way she deserves to be treated. And you see you see you see Sidney Poitier struggle throughout the entire film, I think, with the fact that, does he love her? Is this a fatherly love? Is this a relationship kind of love? He could have totally taken advantage of her and done some really horrible things, but he doesn't.
Right, which you don't really get the sense of his personality at all.
No, yeah, no.
I mean, I think it's also just, like, weird to me, because I'm like, this is the 60s, so, like, by being, like, a 30-year-old black man hanging out with a young white girl, like, that just seems like that puts him in danger of, like, being
right,
like, that could get you killed. It's just like this weird thing of just like, I'm like, why is he so.
But then that happens in the movie, because when Selina's mom catches them in the park, she throws a hissy fit and says horrible things and tries to get the crowd to come to her side.
They just there's a bunch of rich white people and they're like, this
alone.
Is fine.
Right, they just don't.
Which is not super believable.
No
one would be a racist in that crowd.
Or that she would be the only one.
Yeah.
But also it's never stated where the movie takes place. I'm assuming maybe, but it's a big city of some kind, obviously. So New York, Boston, maybe even LA. I don't know.
Yeah, it's
but
very
not in the
where.
South.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it. No, but I don't know. It just still, it read to me as just kind of weird in that, like, this is, like, a very, like, a white blind girl who's, like, could come off as, like, very vulnerable, and, like, it seemed like he had a lot more to lose by doing this. And I never fully understood what his motivation was in helping her. And, like, he had to be a kind person, which is, like... Yeah, I mean, that's fair, but also it's just like, I don't know, I guess it seemed like his character was entirely there to, like, have her have a whole, it's like kind of like when you talk about Manic Pixie Dream Girls kind of thing, like, it didn't seem like his character, we didn't really get a good sense of what his motivations were, why he was doing it. He just always seemed like, well, what is going to be the best for her in this situation, and then he'll do that, and, like, and since they had to be sort of secretive from her family about them having a friendship, it's just, I don't know, it was just like a weird thing where it seemed like there were more institutionalized ways in which he could, by having this relationship, was, like, putting himself in danger, whereas she was not as much. Like, she was already in a very dangerous situation at home, and so really he was just kind of saving her from a dangerous situation in the aggregate. Like, that's kind of the...
But isn't that a good thing? I mean, he saved her from two people who were basically keeping her out of the world. There's so much that he knew about being blind, because he researched and everything. He doesn't have blind people in his family, but there's so much more he knew about being blind than she did.
Right. And that was, I mean, there was another weird thing about, like, how he's kind of, like, upper class, sort of. It's, like, it's never super clear, but, like, when he, like, one of their first interactions is he corrects her grammar, which I'm like, what is happening? Why are we doing that?
that was a little off-putting. Like, don't do that.
So rude.
So then I thought he was a teacher, and he's not.
Yeah, but he definitely, it's very weird. Like, it seemed in that moment where we're introduced to him, I'm like, well, he's not the good guy. He's correcting her grammar. It's so rude and unnecessary. But you just, I don't know. And then, like, that aspect of his personality sort of just gets completely abandoned after that. Like, he doesn't really,
thank goodness.
Like, I'm glad about that. But it was just, like, a weird, like, it's like sort, like, there was, it almost sometimes also felt like there was a little bit of mixing metaphors, and then in the end I was just like, why did we go on this journey? Like, what was, I guess it's like, really is about a blind person who was in an abusive situation and had someone help her get out of that abusive situation. But like, it just felt like along the way it was trying to say a lot more than it had the right to say about stuff. Like, it just kind of felt like it was like, this is about race relations in America in a way where it was just completely unqualified to do that.
Yeah. But then it kind of wasn't. It's along the way we have this unexpected conversation that comes out of nowhere between Selina and Gordon about Selina's friend Pearl, who turned out to be a person of color, whom Selina's mother kicked out of the house. So we know that Selina's mother is a racist, but we already knew she was bad.
Of course she would be.
Yeah, because she's a terrible, awful, because her and Old Pa are terrible, awful, no good people.
Yeah. And this is just from the way that they behave in the scenes. It's not just because she's a sex worker, just to clarify.
Right. No, no.
Like, that on its own is not a problem.
Right, I'm not saying, no.
This movie, though,
obviously sex work is work, but yeah.
You wonder about the writer's opinion on sex work, because there's like an implication that she's going to get trafficked in the end of the movie, which is just kind of also...
That's very scary.
Comes out of left field.
Yeah.
Sort of, which... Yeah, it's but it is an abusive situation that she's in. It's very 100%. Obviously abusive. Yeah.
And not only physical abuse, because there is physical abuse that happens, and the physical abuse is hard to watch, but what really upset me was all the psychological abuse. The fact that she's kept in a room, in their one-room apartment, basically.
Yeah.
And she has to beg to go to the park. This park that's a couple of blocks away from their place.
Right.
That she could very easily get to with mobility skills.
Right.
And
she never gets a cane also.
Never gets a cane, which just throws me for a loop.
He fucking buys her what I guess is maybe The Story of My Life by Helen Keller. This is my best guess, in Braille.
Sure.
And she's like, I don't understand what this says. And he's like, it's written by a blind person. And
you'll get it. Don't worry about it.
It's like, that's how you learn Braille. So it's actually tell you what the letters are. Like, you can't just...
You can't just magically wave your fingers over it and pick it up.
Right.
Trust me, I studied Braille for years. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah, no, someone has to actually tell you how to read Braille, so that was weird. But then he got her that book, but then he didn't get her a cane, which I was like, the cane seems like more practical
first thing you do
to
is
start with.
Get this woman a cane.
Because she can't navigate her surroundings in like pretty major ways. It doesn't know what the curves are, and so it's before curb cuts.
Doesn't know how to cross a street.
Yeah.
And I guess this is just bringing back flashbacks of orientation mobility and that sort of thing. But just...
Which I'm doing on Monday, so I'm dreading it.
Nice. Congrats.
But yeah.
I can't say it'll be fun, but it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I want a guide dog, so that's...
Get it. Yeah.
So I need to do this. But, yeah, I mean, the listening to the traffic is something... And it's the 60s, so no curb cuts, no talking.
Right.
Which also I was like, oh yeah, it's just like the world is the problem. Just seeing that street, I was like, oh yeah, we have ways, curb cuts are better for blind people, and the talking lights are better for blind people, and having the vibrating buttons that have an actual indent are better. There's all these ways where the situation she's in, I was like, oh yeah, infrastructure totally matters, because she was in more danger because of the lack of infrastructure for blind people, which, I mean, duh, but also it just made me think about it.
Right, but then the fact that she gets to the park the first time being dropped off by Old Pa, and he just drops her off at a tree, but she physically doesn't have the wherewithal and hasn't learned the skills yet to move from that spot.
Right,
I mean, we learned that when Gordon, geez, I want to call him Gardner, and that's not correct. When Gordon offers her a drink and she doesn't drink it, because I was honestly wondering, I was like, she's at the park the whole day, right? How is she going to go to the bathroom?
Right.
How does that work? And I figured, the movie will never address it. And they actually do. He gives her a drink and she's like, oh, I'm not thirsty. I don't feel like it. And he's like, he picks up on it and is like, oh, you probably want to know where the restroom is.
Except for he says the most weird cryptic
He says it
thing.
in the most weird cryptic way, and I did not enjoy that. I'm like, okay, wait a minute.
So much creepier.
Because he's
It's like,
there's,
there's a bathroom at the park.
there's a room at the park, you know, for
For
pretty little girls to
go.
wash their hands, and I'm like, don't do that, my dude, please.
It's so much
No.
creepier than just saying like you could pee at the bathroom that's like a few
Right.
paces over there.
Right? Yeah. Let me. If do you need me to guide you to the? No. No, do not like at all.
But yeah, there is she's very
Sheltered.
immobile and
Yeah. And that's
but she's working.
she's working. They got her working. She strings beads.
Yes,
All
and some
day.
blind people can aspire to also, for the record.
Yeah, that's just so goddamn depressing.
And I heard something where they're like it was inspired. The beads thing was inspired by blind people at the Braille Institute that they visited
my
and the kind of work
God.
they were doing. Because it's like,
Here, you can string these beads.
yeah, and once she has a sighted person to help her, then it's way more efficient. So it's almost like maybe she can't do that either if it's so much easier with a sighted person there.
Yeah, I mean that felt a little sad because I was like, okay, the one thing that she can actually do, and all of a sudden, yeah, just plug in a sighted person, and
Right.
everything is okay now.
It's
You
like
know?
the classic stupid blind person trope that we will see again and again. Just like a blind person is wholly incapable, and like once they regain sight or once there's a sighted person, all of a sudden, you know, they could do this work easily when it's not like they could ever have like. And I mean, like, okay, there's like crypt time, so things do take longer sometimes, and that's like part of why capitalism is ableist, but like, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. And it also means that maybe we should just be doing higher level work, because maybe we're more suited to be like rocket scientists than we are beaters, people who like put beads on chains or whatever she was doing. So I guess that's the moral, is we should be rocket scientists instead. But yeah, so that's
and just the fact that that job was probably thrust upon her and she didn't have a say, just because her family is
it's her family who needed
Right.
money. If she was getting that money, that
Right.
would be a different
and
matter.
she probably doesn't get to keep any of the money that she makes. No,
Yeah.
she probably not at all. But just the fact that that's all they saw her aspiring to. That is in her future. That's all they saw. Is that
Right.
she's just gonna live with us, be a burden on us, and just string
Except
these
for
beads
she's
all
not
day.
a burden at all, because she's like she provides
Right.
both income and does everything around the house.
Right,
So
she-
she's like super. She's like a
She's
has
super
it all
efficient.
woman. You know.
Yeah, when it comes to being like a homemaker, she's got it. Like
And-
she's cooking food and doing everything.
And she's the only one who reliably is working, like, because the other two of them seem to be just kind of fucking off half the time. Like, old
Right.
Pa definitely is, like, not doing the job that he theoretically has.
He takes whatever money he gets and drinks it away.
Right.
Basically.
We don't, and we, like, yeah, we have to assume that they're not the most stable source of income. And she's making them both income, and she is doing everything around the house. She's doing both of those things, yet she's she's considered completely incapable, even though she's doing basically everything for them. Like, they are actually relying on her to do a lot of stuff. But
There's
then,
so much more out there
right.
than just being a homemaker. And I guess that's what always raised my hackles the wrong way.
Yeah.
Because I'm just like, I could not do that for the rest of my life. There's no way.
No.
And seeing any blind character, be it fictional or hearing about a real person, and seeing someone who is just completely cut off from the world, and it is not their choice because they just don't know any better, because no one has taught them.
Right. Well, it's not even just that she doesn't know any better. It's just she's just like it's abuse. It's like
Right. They've not been given the opportunity. It just
Right.
it just makes me so upset.
It's frustrating because it seems like it's so much easier to do. Like, it is just a form of abuse. Like, isolating someone from the outside world is a tactic abusers use to abuse people. And, like, it's just so frustrating how like, because society fucking sucks, and because, you know, at this time there were no curb cuts, like, so she couldn't cross the street, you know, there, like, if we had these infrastructural ways in which people would have access to it, then, you know, then we would be much less likely to be vulnerable. But because society doesn't always do this stuff for us, and like, and it just makes it so much easier to abuse disabled people, and it's really hard watching that, because you just are like, yeah, that's like, we're forced to depend way more on other people, and like, the idea of her needing to wait to get a ride is like, it's weird. I was weirdly triggered by that, like, especially like growing up in Southern California, being like, oh yeah, if people are unwilling to give you a ride and you have to like constantly negotiate with them, and then if they're just not willing to because of their own interests, then, you know, sucks to be you.
Watching her go to the park the first time, because the second time she figures it out, but the first time, and she only gets about halfway, that was hard to watch.
Yeah.
Because I know what that feels like.
Yeah, definitely.
And also to be so close, because I go through this all the time, to be so close to a place that you're trying to go to, you know it's there. You know it's right there, and you've circled the block 12 times, and you cannot find it.
Yeah.
And you
had that experience so many times.
It's awful. And I just get upset at myself because I can't find this, and I'm upset because the block is weird, and this place that I'm looking for, there's no signage, you know, whatever. But it's hard, and it sucks, and you feel absolutely ridiculous.
Right. And like, you feel just kind of like helpless and frustrated because you're just putting in so much more work for this thing that everyone else has access to. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, and that she has, that she is so, like, just does not have the ability to leave this situation without outside help is a real bummer, just in general. But yeah, I mean, I think some of the, I guess in some ways they like capture the way in which you can like be made to be helpless because of a disability, even when you're not inherently helpless. But like, people are basically, you know, using society's oppression to like make you helpless. Like, I think that there wasn't a lot of stuff where I'm like, this is, you know, this would never happen.
Right. A lot of the situations that she's got herself into, I've been in one way or another.
Yeah. There was a lot of the things kind of did ring somewhat true to her character.
But with all the really awful, deep moments of sadness, there are also wonderful moments of joy. I mean, that supermarket scene,
where they're just kind of, I was just like, oh my god, they're gonna hit someone.
I know, right? I'm just like, she's gonna like fall off the cart. I mean, but I'm like, but I've done that. Like, I've done that with my mom and with friends and everything, and just learning, just touching everything. What is this? What is this? What is this? Being shown the world, essentially, and just he doesn't want, you know. At this point, their relationship is still new, so I don't know, but he doesn't want anything from her. He's not doing this to gain something. He's just showing. He's just experiencing the world.
I wish we again had more of an understanding of what he was thinking and all. I mean, I guess we just don't have any sort of idea of what he's thinking throughout the movie about the whole situation.
Right. Well, because I mean, they share. You know, he shows her affection, obviously, but it's very father figure. It's very innocent. You know, he kisses the top of her head, and that's like their thing. They do share one kiss in the kitchen.
Yeah. And
you think maybe it's going to go further, and you think it could go further, but Gordon stops that from happening. And maybe it's because she's white. Maybe it's because she's blind. Maybe it's because
she's 18 years old.
Yeah, well, that's a good reason. That's probably the reason. She's 18 years old, and I think he knows that all of these things that she's feeling are because he's the first person that's shown her a scrap of kindness in the world, and it's the fishbowl effect, basically. And he is trying to avoid that and not do that.
Yeah. I think
with her.
right. I think that's it. All makes sense. I think just like to kind of, I don't know. I think also just like we shouldn't have to wait for someone who's just unequivocally decided to make us their project, like to get independence too. Like there's also something sad about it, like that that you have to have this character that just seems, you know, like sort of unmotivated to, like, you know, other than just a kind of completely ever-present need to like make her life better. Like you shouldn't have to rely on some, you know, person to come along that's just like, we'll sacrifice whatever just to make sure that you are out of your abusive situation. I don't know. Or like that you are able to like just do simple things like being able to cross the street. Or,
but she's coming from a place where, yes, I want her to have her own agency, obviously, and I want her to get up and decide, I'm going to do this. And eventually she kind of does. It takes a while, but eventually she kind of does. But kind of. But when you're told all your life you're nothing, you know, and you're not given the tools to succeed,
right?
It's so much harder. I'm not going to say you can't, because
it takes a community of people. I think all human beings, it takes a community of people to live a happy life. If you're cut off from everyone, abled or disabled, like, it's just like, that's not the recipe for a happy life, I don't think. So I do think that I believe, deeply, and we should all be kind of communal in the way that we see things. And I don't necessarily think that that's something that only disabled people need, a community as well. Like, I think everyone needs a community, but I do think that there is like a weird bit of like a power dynamic, not in like an abusive way, but like just that someone needs to be the one who has the power in the situation to then, kind of clear your way, and that you have just no ability to do anything. And in a weird way, like, she doesn't even really want to go to blind school. Like, she's kind of like wants to date him.
Yeah, she'd rather stay with him.
Kind of like, okay, I guess if you're 18, like having like a, the emotions of like, I think I love this person, and like all that can be very like extreme.
Oh, absolutely. But I mean, I was still, when the movie started, I was trying to gauge this character's age, because you listen to the way she speaks, you look at the way she moves, and I'm just like, geez, is she 13, 14, 16?
Right. I was trying to do the same thing.
I don't know. And then, you look at her performance and everything, and it finally clicks. Oh, her performance is weird and stunted because that's how this character was raised. So, of course, she's still going to act like a little girl, a quote-unquote little girl, because she doesn't know any better.
Which is also just kind of depressing, and, like, part of me is just like, would that be? I mean, she's had to become an adult at such a young age. Like, that's not always the reaction of people.
Right.
Like, it's maybe less common that you would just be so childlike at that point.
But it's so interesting, though, because she's had to become an adult real fast. She never got a childhood. And yet, because of the way she's been raised, she still has this really odd childlike innocence that's there.
Right, which is also weird because she's had no exposure to anything innocent making. She's had pretty much consistently things that would jade you and make you and completely take away any innocence you had. Like, that's been so much of her experiences in life. So there's a weird kind of dissonance of like, you would expect someone who's have to gone through that everything to be a little bit more hardened and like not as just so open. Like, it felt to be a little bit odd, and that she just kind of and I think it's hard because it's like when you have a disabled character and they're acting like a child or acting age inappropriate, like they're so young, it can just come off ableist because of how ableism works, because there's a common thing of like seeing disabled adults as children, and so it's, I don't know, sometimes when that happens I'm just kind of get my guard up of just being like, come on, like, she's an adult, but I was like hoping she was a kid, because I was like, why would she be behaving this way if she wasn't a kid? But yeah, I don't know. I mean, do you think that, would you have rathered her, or do you think that this was better than if she did turn out to be younger in the end? I mean, I guess, I don't know. It's a hard question to answer.
That is a hard question to answer. I mean, I was glad to learn that she was 18, because for me it explains her performance and why she was so stunted, because I just kept floundering and wasn't sure, and it was driving me nuts. So I'm glad that she is 18. I think, I can't even say that her and Gordon's relationship would be super different if she was younger.
Yeah.
Because it would still...
The kiss that
The kiss wouldn't have happened, but...
Yeah, she definitely initiated...
Right.
Right. So it wasn't, like, rapey in that way, but, like...
No, but she thinks that's what she wants, you know?
Right.
And it might not be. And that's Gordon's whole thing about, you know, I want you to go to the school, wait a year. And maybe he wants her to forget him because she deserves other opportunities and deserves to experience the world.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think I guess it's left sort of ambiguous. I just assumed it was like because he says like, oh, you'll know if it's worth being together, and that I was like, that could come from a genuine place of just like, you know, when you're that age, you don't really know who you are yet,
right?
And so like making big decisions,
and you can't just throw yourself at the first guy who shows you affection.
Right.
Okay, maybe you can if
you definitely can.
Sure, absolutely. If you're older and it could be the one, you know, and they could be your person.
Yeah, but it's a natural thing to do, but it's also a natural thing to like in that situation wind up in an abusive situation because of, you know, just if the first person who shows you affection, again, it just makes you sadly just a lot more vulnerable to abuse for like very legitimate reasons of like, it's not her fault that like, of course, but he's not abusive at all.
No, I don't think that would have happened. I don't
definitely not with his character, but
no.
Part of it is just like if you had a different character that was like even, you know, that she's just so vulnerable in like some weird ways of like his character was so obviously not creepy in any way at all.
Right, he never sexualized her.
Yeah, he's like very, very like father figure. It was weird when she kisses him because you're like, this is not the relationship that was being built. Like there is like a weird, I don't know. It just, for me, I was like, oh, it kind of like complicates all of this. And then it's even funnier to think that in the South they cut that scene out because it's an interracial kiss.
Right.
I guess I don't know if that's funny, but it is. It's just a very, I don't know. I mean, I think that I was trying to figure out like it's the 60s, and I was trying to like get some sort of context to that because like you would just never make like this movie today would make no sense basically. Like if it was being made this year, if you wanted to make the same plot in a movie, you would have to actually structurally change things because it doesn't really work.
Yeah, well,
in this context,
right? I mean, because technology for blind people has changed.
Well,
so there's all of that. Like you could try to shut her out from the world, but it just wouldn't be like that. It wouldn't be like it was in the 60s.
I mean, if you wanted to though, I mean, like you need to get a cell phone to like have access to certain things.
True.
Like they wouldn't be buying her cell phone, those characters. I mean, I don't know about that. I think that yes, there is a lot more like accessibility stuff now, and maybe like if she was in a lot of streets in Portland, she would be able to cross the street. And curb cuts are definitely more common now, but but I do think that there's still I don't think we've come far enough that you couldn't abuse someone in the way that she was being abused. I think that that's still definitely very possible.
And there are definitely stories still now of people who have been abused and in abusive relationships, but specifically people who are confined or kept away from the world.
Yeah.
The Wolf Pack is a really interesting documentary about 6 brothers. I think it's 6 brothers. about a band of brothers who were basically locked in their New York City apartment for years.
Right.
Years and years and years and years and years and years and years.
And they're probably able-bodied.
Were
they?
It's a really great documentary, actually. They're really interesting family. The one thing that their parents let them do is they could watch endless amounts of movies. So they began to recreate the scenes that they've seen in movies. And there's just, it's really cool.
It's
and there's like hours of video footage of them doing this. But yeah. Yeah, but it's absolutely still happening.
Right. You can do that with a able child if you really wanted to, and it's even easier with a disabled child. And sometimes it is just genuine neglect could mean that, like, not even, neglect of a child that is completely abled, that child might be able to, like, run away, or do something like that. But, like, for a blind child that's being neglected, you could also be, like, stranded and, like, stuck in a place because you're just getting no resources in how to, like, interact with the outside world. So I think being blind could definitely make that situation even more shitty for the person, or, like, even make it easier to be in, like, that kind of confinement, like when someone's in an abusive relationship or abusive situation a home life. But yeah, I mean, I think I just think their relationship though is like the thing that that probably wouldn't make as much sense today. Like just the kind of like the building them as like sort of being a couple, and him being 30 and she being 18. Right. Like it would just come off as like really weird.
Right, which is immediately what I went to. Yeah. It's where you go seeing something like that. And you might immediately be like, "Oh, he's just in this to take advantage of her because she's young and naive." And he just, he'll hit it and quit it and then never see him again.
Right.
And that's just not what happens at all.
No. Yeah, I mean, I think that it's also like, I think this movie is like sort of trying to like, what are your stereotypes about like black men and whatever, and which is like kind of like, ugh, I don't know, not my favorite Hollywood being like, look at racism, isn't it bad? But then like not making anything interesting. I mean, not even just interesting, but making it so sanitized and just kind of completely negating actual civil rights issues, just kind of like living in a weird fantasy world. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, so as far as stereotyping black folks, we meet Gordon's brother.
Yeah.
And he's a doctor, so he's also very successful.
Right. Very upper class.
Right. But he's also, comes in with the thought, and I think maybe he's the audience surrogate as far as like questioning what this relationship is.
Right.
Oh, you brought another girl home. Oh, she's a blind girl. Oh, and then he sees that she's still there. Haven't you done whatever you're gonna do? And then.
Right, he's like, why are you doing this? And then he says something about how, like, Whitey doesn't, like, is not going to look out for us. Which part of me was like, I mean, yeah. Like, it's not the worst of points.
Yeah,
like,
no, it's a very good point. It's a very good point.
Especially given the fact that there have been many, historically in this country, many black men who have been killed just for even, like, not associating with a white woman at all, but just still, like, there being some tale about him, associating with a white woman, and that's enough to get you killed in a lot of places. So it's like, pretty... It's not nothing to be,
right, to be weary of,
yeah. So, but then he's like, you and your civil rights stuff, and it's almost like the brother is supposed to be the one who, I guess the brother is supposed to be the one who's like into civil rights stuff, and you're like, okay, what is this movie trying to say? Like, I don't understand what, like, they're like, well, this, I guess, like, all races are exactly the same. I mean, I guess it is, like, the ultimate colorblind narrative. Like, as like, a colorblind narrative can be, it is as, like, on the nose as can possibly be. Like, you literally have a blind character that, like, does not know that he's black until the end of the movie. So, it is...
And even then, she's like, okay, cool. I will... Not only that, but she says that he's beautiful.
Right.
She thinks he's beautiful.
Which, like, and he's like, some people don't. Which I'm like, was the sexualizing of black men not a thing back then? I don't know.
Well, it was a thing in that most black men were thought of as these awful, savage people who were going to come in and take all the white women.
Yeah, I guess in that way. Yeah, which is, I guess, different.
They
than
were
now, where it's a fetishizing really more.
Well, and they were also fetishized and exoticized too.
Yeah, but it was kind of funny. I was like, it's like, it's just, it's anytime a blind person like, you're beautiful. There's never been a good scene, in my opinion.
But
We've been to watch so many of those.
Sure. But I think this one felt different or worked better for me because, yes, she was talking about physicality. Sure, absolutely. She thinks he's beautiful. But it's his spirit. It's everything else. It is him. It's his whole being that she's commented on.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Right. But I mean, like, no, duh.
Well, yeah, I know.
He's really
he's been wonderful to her.
Done all this stuff to help her.
Yeah.
Just like, just kind of basically plucked her out of this abusive situation and put her into like a place where she could actually like have access to education and like doing things and like having a happy, fruitful life as a disabled person with access to tools to live independently. That's seems like, it's a giant thing to do for someone. Like, I don't know, I guess it felt so like I think for me, the whole movie felt super forced, and like, it was like trying to say something, but then I also was like, I don't know if I really was that excited about what it was trying to say. Like,
well, it's very black and white. I mean, racism bad,
Right.
black people good.
Right. Or like, seeing, and that racism is entirely has to do with visually seeing a person, and there's no other factors that go into it. And that, like, we have this, like, a black man who's, like, correcting people's grammar, like they're, like, some shitty old white dude. Like, it's just, like, it's just a very weird mixing of metaphors. But it's, I don't know. I think it just felt very much like a bunch of sighted white people wrote this movie. And, like...
Oh, because a bunch of sighted white people wrote this movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, really, it was one person, and then also was based on a novel.
Right. Well, in that case, did you buy Elizabeth as a blind person?
The performance?
Yeah.
I thought her performance was... Well, she gets sunglasses.
Mm-hmm. Which I think works to her advantage.
Yeah, so it makes it easier for her to, like, read as a blind person because she's not forgetting to, like, move her eyes around or, like,
right.
Doing the classic sighted person mistake of just, like, looking without moving your eyes around in your head. But, I mean, she's kind of, like... I mean... I'm always thinking, like, wow, it just would have been easier if you got a blind person because you wouldn't have to, like, teach them how to be a blind person. Mm-hmm. But her performance is fine. Like, it's not like she forgets that she was playing a blind character, but...
Right.
But, I think she is... I mean, I don't know. It's passable for, like, a sighted actor, but I think at this point in the podcast, I've, like, stopped even... like wanting to analyze them because I'm like, no, you shouldn't have a role. If you're gonna make a blind character, you need to have a blind person be there so they it's just losing my ability to even have any. But I don't know, what do you think?
I totally agree. This role could have easily been played by a blind actress. And I think once she does receive the sunglasses from Gordon, that takes care of all the eye lines and stuff.
Yeah.
I suppose what I bought most was her frustration.
Yeah.
Her vulnerability and her frustration.
And she gets mad in that one scene.
Yeah, and it's great. I mean, yes, it is kind of the trope of the crazy woman having,
the hysterical
woman. Thank you. Crazy is not the word I wanted. Hysterical woman, yes. But I've been in that position.
Me too. Well, that was
so
the weird.
I felt like I empathized 100%.
Watching that, I was like, I am so angry as well. Like, it was just like, it was that feeling of, it was kind of hard to watch. And it's funny because at the very end of the scene, I was also like, oh, this is basically a hysterical woman scene, but also just like so unbelievably justified. Like, to the point that you just, like, I just at that point was so mad because it's just like the way she was being treated was so not okay, to the point that like it was, I mean, I would think at that point I was just like truly triggered, and also just like, yeah, of course you would scream and yell at that situation, because like it's just hard to watch too, because it's like she's so fucking like vulnerable, and on her own, she had absolutely no access to any sort of help. Like, she really needed someone who was actively seeking her out, and when she didn't show up at the park, was actively trying to find her. Like, if she didn't have someone who was like going the like way extra mile to give her help, then she could have been in such a dangerous situation. They could have just escalated, and like just the unfairness of it all in the end was just like, it felt. Like, I was really glad that she got to go to the school in the end, because obviously that's like...
Oh, yeah, that's the outcome I wanted.
Right, that's like an actual happy ending. If she, like, wound up with Sydney, if she talked him into, like, being in a relationship with her instead of her going and getting an education, that'd be so deeply depressing. So I'm, like, glad that didn't happen.
Because then it would fall on him. I mean, because then she's basically just starting over again.
Right.
She is...
He already has a job too. He can't just also learn everything about being a TBI. Exactly. But it would be the same relationship all over again. I mean, she's like, I'll cook for you, I'll clean for you, but then you're still dependent on him, and you're not actually learning anything. And I think he just couldn't have that. Yeah,
she
and
needs
that was
to learn. Like,
definitely the happiest ending that could happen, is like actually having access to a real education and like independent living skills. And yeah, that I think was an actual happy ending, not like what Hollywood is just decided was a happy ending. Like sometimes you'll watch things where you're like, they shouldn't have gotten together. Like, I didn't like them as a couple. It was like weird power dynamics. But like, it wasn't, this I felt like was a happy ending. But yeah, it was just like, I think her lack of agency though in that scene where she's like so mad about everything that's happening and feels just so helpless. It's just, the helplessness was very hard for me to watch.
Yes.
Because it's just like, when you're in that place, it's like, that's the worst periods of your life, is when you have that feeling of just complete helplessness of like, I just can't do anything. And it is sad, because in a way it's like, she just remained helpless technically throughout the whole movie. Like, she never had agency. She just got lucky in that someone who did have agency like completely like dragged her out of this dangerous situation. Right. With people, like a tug of war where he was able to like get her free. And but
not all blind people have a Gordon.
Yeah.
Or just someone to swoop in and show them what they're missing.
Right, like almost no one does. Like, that's not a common thing. And like, because like, I think in the real world, like, he seemed like a movie character, in that like anyone in the real world, you would be nervous about their ulterior motives. Like, anyone behaving to the way that he was behaving, it's like, what do you want from me?
Right. Like, and I suppose she was just so naive that those questions just wouldn't have crossed her mind.
Right. But it's like, but that was also kind of like one of the kind of like not great things about it. Because I'm like, if someone saw this movie, it was like, yeah, those, just trust anybody who's like going out of their way to help you. Where I'm like, there's not that many people. Like, some people are very kind and want to help, and that is definitely a personality, but he just does so many things where he goes completely out of the way to help her, and you just kind of are like, there's not a lot of people who would do this in the actual world. Just because also you don't want to necessarily, like, you don't know the situation too. So, like, in some ways, it's like getting involved can put someone in more danger. So these are not, they're not cut and dry situations. And, like, helping someone get out of a dangerous situation is, a wonderful thing when you have the opportunity to do that. But it's tricky. It's not, like, I feel like the movie kind of, like, makes it, in some ways, easy, like, feel a little bit like it's easier to do as well than it probably would be in real life. I don't know. Is there other parts of the movie we should talk about before we get to our blindness acuity?
I think I'm ready.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to go first?
Sure. So I'm giving A Patch of Blue a 2400, and I think I'm going to be higher than you. I know I am, but I think I'm so high because as a person who enjoys acting and who enjoys performances, I think the performances absolutely carry this film.
Yeah.
And I think even though the villains are very, black and white, absolutely, they're still, everyone is still engaging and fun to watch.
Yeah.
And you definitely feel things. I mean, did you feel anything watching this movie? Absolutely.
Yeah.
We felt things, and it wasn't. I thought this movie was going to be a slog to get through, honestly, and I thought it was going to be just a bunch of pretentious Oscar bait, and yes, it is a bunch of pretentious Oscar bait, but I liked it. I enjoyed it, and I don't know. I kind of wish I didn't like it as much as I did, because I kind of feel a little bit sappy. Because I was really drawn in by the plot and the story, and I liked it. And I wish I could give you a more compelling reason than that, but I just really freaking liked it. I don't know if I would tout it as, the movie you need to watch that explains blindness and race relations. No,
it's everything you'll ever need to know. Throw in sex work.
Right.
Alcoholism. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I feel good about a 2400.
Nice. I'm going to give it a 2100.
Okay. Not as low. Honestly, not as low as I thought you'd go.
I was thinking you probably thought I was going to go lower than that.
I did.
I mean, technically, I actually probably have more problems with the race stuff than I do with the blindness stuff. I think, it's like, though, I mean, the blindness stuff is, in some ways, a lot of Hollywood tropes, because you do have this, like, a blind woman who's so helpless and abused, and that is something that we see a lot in these movies. I think the fact that it was also trying so hard to say something about race at least made me get distracted from more ableist dynamics.
Pick a lane movie, I guess, is what is.
It was, but in some ways, I think, like, it did a decent job at showing how a blind person can be stuck in an abusive situation in a way that wasn't, that rang true and didn't feel, and you didn't have a character that was, like, blaming it on the blind. You had a pretty accepting blind person, and you really just saw how infrastructure and the way our society is built is what can hold totally capable blind people back, and that she was just not being given the opportunities. And if we had a society that just automatically did what Gordon does in this movie, then blind people would be equally capable as anyone else. And so I think that message is not one I'm against. Right. I think it does a decent job at that.
Well, and you think about the quote, let Whitey take care of his own. But disabled folks, people like us slip through the cracks all of the time.
Right.
And I think that is something, I cannot relate to the black experience. Can't do it. I'm a white person. I don't know. But I do know what it feels like to fall through the cracks. I do know what it feels like to be othered and discriminated against.
Yeah, and I mean, she had a triple whammy of gender discrimination, disability discrimination, class discrimination. She had very little privilege, obviously, because she is in a situation that's so abusive.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it is people of color's responsibility to come and get us, and, and make sure.
Well, and there's a lot of
we're doing
disabled people of color, and that's and especially as a society, we especially fuck over people, which, I mean, I don't think Hollywood does a lot of, we have a lot of white characters. That was another thing. I was we do have a lot of, most of our blind characters are white. They're mostly men, and they're mostly white, and it's and yet we still have like, I feel like sometimes we'll have these portrayals. The women are just so badly treated in all the movies we watch that sometimes I do just get very sad about that. Like, I think that's one of the hardest things about this podcast is just how having a blind woman in a movie means that they're going to be abused unless they are able to gain their vision back, and then they get
And
to
they
not be
still-
abused for a second.
Or they just still get abused.
Right, or
for a
the-
second. Yeah.
Yeah. That seems to be the pattern with all the movies we watch. But yeah, I mean, that is definitely a weird thing about, but I don't know. Hollywood has yet to figure out how to do disabled stories. You know, we shouldn't be casting, we should never be casting able people as disabled roles. It's very problematic, but yet we've not even remotely learned that lesson. We definitely should not be giving them Oscars for for doing that. You know, I think Elizabeth Hartman was a decent actress, but she could have had a role as a side character and in another movie. Like, I just don't think that is... Yeah, I just don't love that.
Right. I mean, if anything, you know, this is my real big introduction to Sidney Poitier, and now I'm just like, I want to go watch everything
He's
that this
very
man has ever
charming.
done. He's so charming. Oh my God. He's my favorite part of the movie. I loved him.
Yeah,
I love
he
him.
is.
He's amazing.
It is very funny because I was telling you this before we started recording, but like I've been playing Trivial Pursuit with my family a lot, and we have these cards that are from the 80s and 90s, and he is the answer to like any time there's like a black actor. It's always Sidney Poitier. So now I'm like just very. It was funny watching this movie because I was like, oh, Trivial Pursuit answer.
Yes,
I now have like an
got
actual
one.
voice and like
Right. You can put a voice to the face and the name, and
to the name on all the answers of Trivial Pursuit. But yeah, I think he also because you said that he directed stuff.
Yes,
hasn't he done
he
other
went
things too? Like,
I mean, he went on to be obviously an actor and a director and
yeah,
and social. I think he's done social justice work, and
nice.
yeah, he's an amazing person.
Yeah, he seems pretty cool. So yeah, I mean this movie could definitely be worse or more offensive, I think.
Yeah, I don't feel offended.
Yeah, it's not
No.
offensive. It's just sometimes it's not a feel good movie about blindness, but
No.
in the end, it does have a Hollywood ending that is actually a happy Hollywood ending, and not like an ableist version of a happy ending. So that's cool. But it's I guess 1965, but in some ways it's sad that I'm like, I don't think we've come anywhere far from, this is like the same as a lot of movies that, obviously the weird sexual politics of it, sort of, if it was even making a comment. It's, yeah, some of that stuff is probably you wouldn't do today, but the blindness stuff is, I don't think that's any worse than stuff that we watch now. So, yeah, which is kind of a bummer, but I'd love to see a blind woman that just kicks ass and is not constantly being abused. Like, it would be nice.
One can dream, can't one?
Yeah, we can. It's, yeah, my grandfather was a rocket scientist, just to bring it full circle, and he had the same eye condition I had, and, I'm sure being a white man helped him get that position, but, being blind does not have to stop you from being a rocket scientist, so.
Absolutely. If anything, last week's movie proved blind people can do whatever the heck they want.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, just remember that, and be maybe just advocate to make society like a Sidney
Yes.
Poitier of just infrastructure and systemic ways in which the world works. But yeah, so that is A Patch of Blue. I don't know.
Yay.
I don't think we have anything else to say about it.
I think we did it.
Yes.
Yes.
Just a patch of our thoughts.
There you go.
Yeah. What we are doing next week.
Yes, I'm excited. What are we doing?
So this is a movie we have in the movie we watched today. We have a character that doesn't seem to have a cane, even though she really should. So next week we're watching a movie called Love Leads the Way, a true story, and it is about the first person who gets a guide dog, I guess, in the U.S.
Whoa, cool.
And according to the name, it's a true story. All
right.
I believe that he's the first person, though. That could be one of those things where when we actually watch it, it's a slightly different plot. But it is he is trying to get a guide dog through the movie. So it's a made for TV movie from the 80s.
Oh, this ought to be good then.
Let me double check.
Love it.
Yeah, it is from the 80s and 1984.
Excellent.
So Big Brother will be a big part. No, I'm just kidding. But it's a made-for-TV movie, so maybe that Apple commercial will be...
oh, perfect.
Don't make 1984.
Yeah,
that could be
that'll
one
be everywhere.
In the commercial break. Mm-hmm. There's a copy of it on YouTube. It is, if you want to watch it in a more... official capacity, it's $100 to get a special edition DVD.
No,
of this,
we're gonna watch it on YouTube with the commercials. Yes,
and then there's that very tiny chance that this will all get edited out and it will be replaced with a different movie because we'll find out that it's no longer on YouTube. But the movie seems to be posted in 2017, so my fingers crossed this won't be the week that it gets taken down from YouTube.
Good.
But that is what we're going to be watching next week. We'll see if it's how true a story it is and if it's a good movie. What are you blindsided by?
Well,
this week?
speaking of YouTube, I actually have a YouTube channel I wanted to recommend.
Oh, perfect.
A YouTuber, I should say. Her name is Jessie Gender. She's obviously on YouTube. And she is all about Star Trek. She actually that's how I found her. I was looking up a bunch of Star Trek stuff. And she does an amazing video on data and autism and disability in the Star Trek universe.
Nice.
And I was like, oh wow, what else has she done? And she's done a whole lot of stuff. She's super cool, trans, nerdy. Talks about all things nerd, basically. Trek is her main focus. But she just put out a video on Loki a couple of weeks ago. Loki, the history of Loki from mythology to Marvel, basically, and covers his sexual identity because it's been confirmed. It's in MCU canon now that Loki is bi, pan, gender fluid.
Oh.
So
wait, all of those things
could be all of those things. Bi is mostly what everyone is saying, but honestly,
but he's gender fluid.
He's gender fluid. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, us gender fluid people can't be. We can only be bi or interested in women or interested in men because we can't actually be straight or gay. We just have the only one of those three we can be is bi, and then it's confusing because being someone who's only attracted to men but gender fluid, I'm I don't know if I'm not gay. Sometimes I'm gay, sometimes I'm straight.
Right. Yeah, but it's been confirmed that the character is gender fluid. But the character, and what's cool about Jessie's video is she's but the character has always been like that in the comics even, and in the comics it's explored so much more.
Oh wow.
His gender fluidness.
Well, now Disney has it, so they're gonna get a lot of applause for doing the littlest of things.
It's so dumb. Trust me, it's so dumb. But her videos are super well researched, which makes me happy. There's lots of information. She cosplays throughout the videos, which also makes me happy. And she's just super cool, and her videos usually get lost in the algorithm, so more people need to be watching and checking her out. But yeah, so she goes by Jessie Gender on YouTube.
That sounds awesome. That does sound really cool. What I'm blindsided by this week is a book. Speaking of trauma.
Yes.
It's fun transition. I'm really fun today. It is a book that is called The Body Keeps the Score. The subtitle is Brain, Mind, and Body and the Healing of Trauma. The author is Bessel van der Kolk. But it's 16 hours long if you get the audiobook, so it's a long book.
Big book. Okay.
Yes. But it is just about treating trauma and how trauma affects so many different types of mental, like how it is at the root of so many different types of mental illnesses, and how it's like kind of one of the, you know, most like under looked at, you know, public health crisis basically in the US, and just but also goes through so many different types of treatment for trauma, and what, like how they work, and then also in what context they work, and for what, you know, kinds of trauma, and how, and just like the landscape. And he goes into just so many different kind of aspects of treating, and like talks a lot about different trauma, and some of it can be kind of triggering because it is just really frank discussions of really specific trauma stuff. So it's like one of those ones where, like, if you're very in a like a easily triggered place, not that is not a negative thing, no judgment, but it might be something you want to wait until you're in a little bit more able to be triggered, because some of it is very triggering, but it is, especially coming from like trying to better understand from like a professional lens too, of like therapy and stuff. It is a really cool just kind of analysis of the whole field, and how, and I'm definitely a big proponent of treating trauma specifically, instead of just like categorizing people as having certain mental illnesses and then being like, you know, saying, oh well, we know everything about you, but like actually individually looking at the people's trauma history to kind of give them more, you know, specific support that's gonna be best for them. But yeah, so that is The Body Keeps the Score. I had to wait like multiple months, I think, to get it on Libby, so
that sounds about right.
yeah, but it is in demand and 16 hours, so it takes a little bit of time to read, but yeah, it's still a cool book, and it's called The Body Keeps the Score, by Bessel van der Kolk. So yeah,
Awesome.
We did an episode. We don't have anything else to do.
We did it.
Yes. This is good. Our theme song is by Lucia Fasano. Our YouTube is Citizen White Cane Podcast. Our Twitter is White Cane Pod. Both our Instagram and our Facebook are Citizen White Cane. If you'd like to send us an email, our email address is citizenwhitecanepod@gmail.com. If you'd like to leave us a voice message, there's a link in the show notes. What is your favorite Sidney Poitier performance or thing that he did?
Ooh, that's a good question. Yeah, I like that one. Have you had a charming stranger swoop into your life and teach you about the wonders of the world?
Yes. And do you think you like covering up a scar with sunglasses makes you look more or less beautiful? This is not even a thing we talked about in the episode, so cool, I'm bringing it up now. Well, I guess you have to watch the movie to see what I'm referencing. Any of those things, there's link in the show notes, and come back next week because we're going to lead the way to
We're going to let love lead the way.
yeah, and it's a true story, so you gotta come back to see to hear about that. We'll talk to you then. Bye.
Bye.
Citizen